Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, music podcast of fun times and frivolity. We're a group of friends gathered together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. You follow along, and we all kind of expand our minds and our musical palettes. I'm Petey Rave. And I forgot to write a quippy little thing related to the album, so I like oysters.
Wait, so would this be one of the first weeks you are truly a man with no plan?
Because I can't come up with, because I can't just go back on to man with no plan.
What had happened was,
I can't say man with no plans, so I gotta come up with a new one, but then I forgot. I'm Peter Rave. I'm here. Your man here at this seat. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got David.
Weird improvisational line that will hopefully crack Drew.
Yes. We've got Drew.
Hey, folks.
And of course, we have still with us for this fine episode, we have the one, the only Bryce, aka Neshcom. How you doing, Bryce?
Good. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Yeah. We're here to talk about music, of course. Now we've finally come to the fourth episode. We finally come to the guest episode. It's finally time.
You've suffered enough, Bryce.
He's put up with our albums. Now he gets to present his own. Bryce. It's your choice this week. What have you brought for us this week?
So this week I brought Sophie's Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides. I am just enamored with this album. It came out last year. It was nominated for the Grammy for Best Dance or Electronic Album, and I think it should have won. But I really think this was my favorite album of 2018. Just because we talked a little bit a few episodes ago about was it Seed and Synthetic, and kind of how that was sort of a maximalist sort of production style of just like more. Oil almost feels minimalist in a different way. There are like strokes of pop music in there, but they're reduced down to just like the bare elements, and I think it ends up with an album that doesn't have necessarily a lot of, say, lyrics, but has a ton of things that it's saying. So that's the album this week.
Yeah, let's talk about expectations. David, I'm curious, what were your expectations coming into this album?
When I saw the album cover, I was immediately intrigued. I expected something that I might really be able to sink my teeth into. And after a little bit of internet research, I was really interested in finding out that this may have some similarities to my beloved pop princess from the internet, my beloved Poppy. So I was ready to dive in.
Probably maybe Poppy adjacent would be a good term. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I didn't really have many. This is a artist that I haven't really heard much before. Mostly when I've been getting into the electronic music lately, it's either weird songs that could be from a cyberpunk movie or a bunch of nihilist kids with Kmart tapes. So this, like, the dance stuff, the club sort of pop stuff wasn't really in my wheelhouse. So I was excited to get into that side of things.
Yeah, I don't know quite what to expect. I had an inkling that it was going to be something electronic, something a little bit more poppy, just through prejudice, I guess. But I didn't quite know what to expect. I do know that I think someone should probably go check it and see if they could fix Sophie's caps lock key. Just yeah. I don't know why you need to yell. It's a very nice album name. You don't need to yell it. Just,
She's like Kenta. Maybe she's just like Kenta.
Kenta, yes. Sophie, the Kenta of music. Sure. Bryce, how would you describe this album musically?
Musically, it is. I think one of the classifications for it is like avant-garde pop, right? And I think that's a pretty, there's a generally all-encompassing label for it, because like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of like a lot of the elements feel like things you would get in a pop song. Like if we were thinking like, pop heydays of like the 90s, right? Like those elements are in play here, but they are in a very stripped down format. I think a really good example is like Is It Cold in the Water has the chorus of that like 23-second long run that is looped over and over again. And that really extended dramatic, vocal run feels like a Christina Aguilera thing, but in this in the context of, say that song, it feels totally different. So that's kind of how I tend to talk about this album is it is like pop conventions, but with a different context so that it feels different. There's also some more sort of experimental stuff like Pretending, which is an ambient song almost entirely. But even with that, there is the use of production and the use of the instrumentation to pull out mystery almost. I think it's like a puzzle box of an album, right? And so I think that's it. I don't have an easy like one word hook for it though.
Yeah.
There's not really an elevator pitch for this album.
No. I will say you said pop convention, and now I can only imagine an image of Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears trying to coordinate which panel they want to hit up at the pop convention.
I was thinking there might be a debate between which retro flavor of Pepsi should be brought back in the panel room.
Blue.
And then,
like, there's not...
Oh, Pepsi Blue is great.
And then...
well, I was through the question.
And then in sync, and then non-committal back and forth argument over where they should go to eat.
Sure.
Whatever you want, whatever you guys want. I'm down for anything.
Just something I don't want. Want something nice. I don't want to. We have a little bit of time. Yeah.
And then Justin just says, "You know what? Fuck it. I'm getting sushi. You guys figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting sushi. Bye."
Yeah. And they go follow him.
And they never see him again.
Yes. Let's get to it. David, how would you describe this album musically?
Fun as hell. This really had a lot of experimental, I would almost say disjointed things that I really latched onto. There were things that really took and stretched what we know as pop music or club music and really stretched it. And I really enjoyed the hell out of it. Also, highlight performance of Mozart's sister. Fantastic vocalist. I absolutely loved her all over this album. And Sophie clearly knew what she had with Mozart's sister because she's sprinkled in parts all over this album, and it really, really shines. Overall, it's just I say disjointed, but I mean it in a good way, in that it's kind of a roller coaster, but it's not one that'll make you throw up.
Mm-hmm. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
When David first said it, it sort of hit me as a realization. If we're going to like bring up Poppy and the religion there, and there is something about Poppy that is decidedly trying to ape that style of pop music to a ridiculous degree, and then speak about it lyrically, right? Whereas this is, I think, the opposite. It is a deconstruction of pop music, right? It is taking the elements and sort of putting them on display, which is why I think at multiple times in this record, it's a roller coaster. Like, it goes weird places. Like, the tone is all over the place. There's parts that are like more dream poppy. There are parts with like weird bass modulation that like borders on like your dubstep bass modulation. It never gets into that cartoony of a territory, but it starts to like hearken to that a little bit, and that idea of like pop music and club music, which was actually really cool in those songs. There's 3 of them on here that I can think of that have that like bass modulation. The production in those actually made it feel like a club speaker, like where you get that sort of weird raspiness to it, which I think was actually really cool. Like, the thought process that went into the actual production work in creating this tone and this feeling, I think was really, really smart. There are some dreamy synths all over this, but all in all, it is something that at times feels undecided in what it wants, but yet that adds into what I think musically this is trying to do, which is, like I said, the deconstruction of like what a pop dance hit is really, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I think it's this is something that this sound is just really fascinating, really cool. Like I alluded to at the end of the episode last week, where like this style of music would work perfectly for somebody who's in particular VJing. If you're not familiar with VJing, which is where instead of just playing with audio elements, you're in your system specifically live playing with the visual elements are playing behind you. There's artists like also an artist name that I don't know many VJs. I know one that I think does that part as part of her elements when she's back home in Seoul, South Korea. But Kirara, who I saw at the Korea showcase, does
just to bring up Poppy again. This is something she does in her pre-show as well.
Yeah. So where did we play that? This, and I bring that up because I think again, I'm not sure if this is part of what Sophie does in her shows. People can inform me if you know out there if you've seen Sophie live, if she performs live. But this would fit perfectly with not just random loops in the background, but in specifically this style of music would work perfectly with in VJing actually having responsive visuals to exactly her music, and to the beats and to the rhythms that are happening. And I think that would be cool. Like I would love to see that kind of live performance. I would love to see this in a live performance. And I think that's what's fascinating about the music and kind of like how the energy that it puts out and like that club energy. It almost kind of a little bit. It made me think in moments about. It makes me think of again somebody else I saw at Korea Showcase, Hitchhiker, in a sense, and which I guess it goes to that being the extent of people that I've seen perform DJing sets live at places. Hitchhiker, Kirara, and a couple other people. But yeah, let's talk about some of the actual tracks. Let's drill down. Bryce, what will be some of the key tracks for you?
I mentioned it earlier, but "Is It Cold in the Water" is maybe my favorite song on the album. I have definitely ruined my voice trying to sing along with that song, just on loop because it's the way it handles rhythm, just like all rhythm through synth and like no drums really, and so it's all over this the arpeggioed synth. It's I don't know. There's something really moving about that. The other track that I love is actually the one right after Infatuation, which I think having seen some of Sophie's trajectory, which is a lot of work very similar to like Immaterial from this album, which is kind of a little more mainstream friendly, where Infatuation like feels like if Sophie tried to make a Prince song, right? It's like the emotional epicenter of the album, and I think as a story beat, I in my mind this is like a concept album, and Infatuation is like the inciting action, but yeah, it feels like Sophie trying to make a Prince song, even with like the whining synth at the end. That if you misheard it, you would think that it's like a really killer guitar solo, but then you listen into it and it's not. It's the synthetic whine, and it all just builds and swells, and it makes it has made me cry more than once.
Yes, I like a good synthetic whine, depending on the vintage, depending on the year,
depending on how the replicators are working on the ship.
Exactly. Sometimes you just sometimes you can go with the synthetic wine. Sometimes you just say Earl Grey hot, and you call it a day. Drew. Well, no, David first. We're not switching up the David. What would be some of the key tracks for you?
Initiative order, so I start.
You got that.
I will say
you cast haste on yourself.
So we're moving quick. I will say for Infatuation, Bryce said it started off like a Prince song, and then I wrote here in my notes, it may have accidentally turned into a Radiohead song at the end.
Oh.
And I respected it for that, because it turned into what I would imagine would be an outro to a Radiohead song, maybe on OK Computer or one of the two albums after that. And I respected how that went. Pretending was out of nowhere. Suddenly, whoa, it's an ambient noise track, and it's also fantastic. Face Shopping. This, for me, was the key song, Face Shopping. As I said, there is a lot on this album that reminded me of Poppy. But the thing about Poppy and Titanic Sinclair is that their mirror in the face of pop music and all that it creates around it has a little bit of sinister feeling towards it. It has a little bit of snark, and it has a little bit of irony. And with the lyrics on this song and throughout the album, I didn't really get that. It was self-referential while not being snarky. And I think Face Shopping was the song that really, really hit it for me. That this song really hit the spot for me. I loved it. Face Shopping especially, and the final track, Whole New World, Pretend World. I wrote down, this went places, and I think I want to keep going.
Yeah. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Pony Boy, I'm going to bring up because, like I said, like there's the bass in that. Is something
so
that even
thick.
Right, like
So
and
good.
that's the one I pointed to. I was like, this actually sounds like it's like a sub in like a concert venue, like that old concert, that old club that like still has the speakers they've been using for the past 20 years. They probably should have replaced them, and it's got that little bit of rattle to it, like
with the busted tones.
The cones are just like just too thin because they've been used way too much. It has that tone in any speakers you put it through, and it's weird to me that like she decided to recreate that tone on an album, which I think is really cool. Is It Cold in the Water? probably my second favorite track. Not my favorite. I'm saving that for last. But the actual music in this, again, like I kept picking up on these like little production hits. The music in this like makes you feel like, especially at the beginning, like you're underwater, and it's almost like you're coming out of the water, and then the vocals hit, and then the vocals being just that like little bit of haunting to match like the manic nature of it. It was almost like putting a Dutch angle on music, which is weird. But that's like the only thing I can think of to describe like that feeling with that slight unease in it, which was cool. And then Immaterial. I like my dance pop super over the top. I like a lot of like the pink bubblegum nature of that stuff. And this, I think, had that in spades. It was just amazing for that. It was something that I just like, wow, okay, that was the song I gravitated to of like, it was probably my favorite just because of that. It was just that little bit over the top that just, I gravitated towards it. What can I say?
Yeah. I think, as people have said, Pony Boy. I think a Pony Boy is, I think, where the album really starts.
I guess I'm the one.
Yeah. I really didn't like Pony Boy at first. Like when the first 3 tracks on here had come out as singles before the album, and I really didn't like Pony Boy. It took me a long time to really like it.
Yeah, I don't blame people for maybe not being super into it, but I don't blame Deej for not being into it. But I think if nothing else,
you can blame me. It's fine.
I think if nothing else, the specific thing is that I think this is the song, and nothing against the opening track. It's Okay to Cry, which. I'll bring that up. Which is, I think, like a nice like. This is modern dance pop version of what you can almost be a reimagined Cure song specifically, or Boy George, something like a Boy George or a Culture Club song. But it's the genre is different. Like the mentality is the same, but the genre is completely different and more modern. But like Pony Boy is where. I like that song, but I think the energy really gets going in Pony Boy and carries over really well into Face Shopping, which, like I said, it just has an intensity. I think it's percussive in a really fun way that is just so cool. Like with how the kind of the almost meditative chant of the lyrics in a sense, like. But like it's just like it's punchy in just a really cool way, and I just really enjoyed Face Shopping. And then there were great moments on throughout the whole album, but I think like just how that gets you going and then gets you going through the rest of the album, I think is the biggest thing that I would point out as far as like tracks. Those are those tracks that get you going and carry you through the rest of the album. I think, which is it's a great album. And it's all right. But yeah, those will be the tracks. But let's get back around the horn, talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
This was the first album on Record Breakers that really drew me in a while, where I gave it a few extra listens. Just to enjoy it, just to really just enjoy the album and really let it sink in. It, like I said, it did remind me of Poppy in some ways. The songs that I really enjoyed. And it was most of them. But the songs I did not enjoy, I really didn't. There was really no in between. I absolutely loved the more experimental, weirder things on this album. The closer to standard pop tracks, not so much. I feel like Sophie is at her best when she's really just going to experiment and is not held by any conventions of any kind. I think that's when she's at her best. I will say, as much as I enjoyed Sophie's ideas and compositions. The MVP of this album is Mozart's sister. What a voice. Like, I was legit blown away by her voice. I absolutely love her voice. And I think, like, the sky's the limit for her. Some producer out there is going to find her, and she could be a megastar as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. Drew, how would be your conclusion are? How be your conclusion on the plank?
A little bit of the same. There are songs on here for what they did for the record. I think they were smart. They were well played. Like I said, that deconstruction idea I think is really cool. And needed some of them. Now, that being said, there aren't things that would be thrown onto a playlist by me. But there are things in here that would be. And that's the cool thing is like I said, this album's really a roller coaster of tonality and of ideas. And I think that's really cool. That experimentation and that poking around in the space, I think is something that isn't done a whole lot. Especially in like the electronic music space. It's something that you have a lot of artists that sort of get into their space and they decide their space and they decide what they're going to play around in, and then they push the buttons a little bit, but they don't get too far out of that. And I think the thing that I should have known going into this, having listened to some music, is that there was going to be some experimentation on this record, and I think that's really cool. And it's something that is different that I think is fun for the space. But like I said, there are things that hit for me, there are things that kind of hit for me, and there are things that didn't. There was some things I was more in the middle of, but top to bottom, I think for what this album was going for, it hit every mark. And something that was really kind of cool and really special.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of hits for me. I think for me, I think I had a similar thing where my energy ebbed and flowed, and I think for me it was more like it ebbed and flowed with the energy of the album, ebbed and waned, like kind of waxed and waned. And for me, I definitely was more engaged with some of the like more of the experimental stuff and the more hyper intensive stuff and the more kind of like grabby stuff. And the ballads were, they were nice, but like I kind of wanted to get back into like the where you kind of like percuss my ears out, like a little bit, and kind of play around with
something for
like,
the subwoofer.
Yeah, and which is I think there's plenty of that, I think, but overall this is just a really fun record, really fun experimental like look at something dance poppy, but in a kind of like cool transgressive way that like transgressive like the record label.
You did that on purpose.
Semi. I don't even know.
That joke's gonna be a future classic.
But I will say it. I will, if I see that label name again in any context, I'm going to be interested. So, just from this, just because like if this is the sound and this is the kind of like what they get into, whatever it is, it's going to be something. So I think this album is just really cool, and I think it works really well musically, and it just is. It's just fun. It's just fun. Bryce, ultimately, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Oh, I love this album. I think what I appreciate the most out of it is how intentional every second of the album is. I mentioned earlier that I think of this as like a concept album, and it's an album that doesn't always speak in lyrics, especially because you look at something like Face Shopping, which feels like from a lyrical standpoint, like a yes, beauty and materialism, and we're all putting on a face. But on a broader level, the whole album, if didn't pick up on this, or if you didn't have this perspective on it before, I would say next time you listen to it, if you listen to it another time, which I recommend, looking at it through the lens of a coming out story. A part of Sophie as an artist is that this album was not outright a coming out, but was along with it was a lot of like, well, no, you all just kind of assumed I was a guy, but I'm actually a girl, and all these broader things outside of the album. But as a piece of work that is telling that tale, and I think can tell it in two different ways. I think it's rather cyclical. You can view it as an internal story of like, coming to terms with who you are, and your queerness, and then the external struggle of coming out to the rest of the world. I think the album tells that story, and it tells it through production, which I think is what makes it a masterwork, not just through lyrics. I mean, hell, half the lyrics you can't understand, right? Pony Boys verses and like almost all the lyrics in Whole New World and Pretend World are like, were mentioned, were like this modulated bass, and they just sound like this growl, but that also speaks into the story, and I just think it's like a little puzzle box, and it has more things to tell than just what's on the tin. So I think this is a very special album.
Yeah,
I was going to say that part of it, right, is like what that is to have something big like that and sort of like bring it to light. Sometimes you don't understand it on the first time.
Yeah. And like the fact that this it kind of ties in the fact that this is the opening track was the first, at least according to Wikipedia, was the first time Sophie used her own vocals, like straightforward vocals, and it was like the first time she showed her face, like mm-hmm. for the lead up to this album. So it's like not just coming out in that sense, but even just coming out at this is me. This is me. Here, check it out. But
then also having Cecile Believer or Mozart's sister doing all the vocals, or at least all the human-ish vocals for the rest of the album, feeds into that as well.
Like, this is me. Wait, who is me?
Who is me? Yes, Petey, you got it.
Yeah, like it's like it plays with that.
Who you is?
Who that is? That's just my baby daddy. Oh, wait.
Who that is? Wade Jones.
That the only me is me is the only.
That joke is just for Petey.
Yes. All right. Now we have talked about Sophie's oil of every pearls on insides, as I read it in front of me as in a way to remember it.
I'm still trying to figure that out. Bryce, tell me that album title. What did it mean to you? Well, I really took some time to think about it. What does it mean to you?
Well, so I think I might know what it's supposed to be. But if you have
if you have, like, you said that for you, this is a concept album, and just I was really trying to work that out because I kind of got that same vibe. Mm-hmm. I just really wasn't able to put it together. So I'm asking you.
Sure. Well, as the thing that I have heard, I don't even know how confirmed this is, but I think Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides is meant to be like a phonetical, almost like joke, or gag is not the right word, but it feels I think it's supposed to be phonetically similar to I love every person's insides.
Oh.
Yeah.
How whether that's apocryphal or not.
Every person's insides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sophie's British, so that could be.
Yeah. Scottish.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of what that is meant to be, because otherwise it is very difficult to kind of pin down what oil of every pearl's insides means.
Yeah. Sophie's Scottish, hails from a city I really want to visit one day, Glasgow, Scotland. Shout out to Nikki Cross
and Craig Ferguson.
Yes. Yeah. Now we get to our haiku reviews. We get to the main event of the evening. We get to the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get to it. David, what is your haiku?
Sophie's kind of cool. I really dig her weird shit. Ozart's sister wins.
Yeah. Drew, what is your haiku?
Did not expect it. Crazy bass modulation. And I found some gold.
My haiku, fun complex dance pop, a cool weird pool to wade into, and wash over you. And of course, last but not least, Bryce, what is your haiku?
Click, whiz, boom, boom, click. Christina, eat your heart out. This water is not cold.
It's hot. It's hot. It's boiling. Of course, that was Sophie's oil of every person's insides. Or oil of.
It works, doesn't it work?
Yeah. Especially if you get to. You gotta get to have the accent. Yeah. But yeah, that was a fantastic album. Of course, it's going to be on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers as a home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. I'll tell you about next week's album in a moment. But it's the last episode with Bryce. Bryce, thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Where can people find you? What tell people about yourself.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Brycas, Brycas, or I have a new podcast where I interview people and we take quizzes and talk about trending topics and try to break them down in a way that is hopefully in a unique perspective. That's at trendinglemon.com, or just look up Trending Lemon in any podcast directory.
Go check that out. Trendinglemon.com. Now back to next week's episode. We're still we're gonna keep doing this where we in the transition. I'm not gonna say who the guest is because I don't know. Because we never know what's gonna happen with scheduling and whatnot. But I will say what the album is gonna be. I have it right in front of me physically. And we're actually gonna talk about an album before we're recording even before it's released, and when it gets released, this episode. Or that episode, won't have been released yet. But
what's the album, Petey?
Yes, we're going to be talking about the Kickstarted album collaboration between Mega Ran and MC Lars. Yes, we're talking about the Dewey Decibel System.
Nice.
So it's some fun lit hop. So check that out. I look forward to that next week. But that's next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at Xtruciferx. Of course, once again, Bryce is at Brycas, Brycas, or trendinglemon.com. Check it out. I'm Petey Rave. This show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com, RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com, Rebelli.net for this and other shows, Rebelli TV on YouTube. Leave comments, like, share, subscribe. Give us feedback. Let us know what you think of the album. Let us know what your journey with the album is. We would love to hear about your feelings.
Do you love every person's insides?
Yes, do you? I hope you do.
I do, but I would like their insides to stay on the inside.
I think it's best for them. I think it's best for them as well. Yeah.
Kinda.
Do all the things. Engage. Conversation. Until next time. Hasta los huevos.
Thank you, Bryce.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.